The following presentation is brought to you by the Realm Network.
It's right about time again to swerve again, confuse the general fans again. Add another swerve and then...
Oh shit! It's Vince Russo!
Vince McMahon's best kept secret.
I am the Antichrist of professional wrestling!
David Arquette won the world title!
I've got a wife, 3 kids at home, and I really don't need this shit.
How can this show be so awful, Mr. McMahon? I didn't think it was.
Viagra on a pole match.
And Hogan, you big bald son of a bitch, kiss my ass!
Judy Bagwell on a forklift match. McMahon, the family, The Rock, they screwed us all.
Now you're the editor, right?
Mankind did it! Jumpy, beat me! Goldberg steered Russo out of the cage.
I'm from New York.
I'll get downright nasty.
This is Vince Russo's The Brand.
Today we're going to a gentleman who made his mark in professional wrestling, but I think he made I know he made a significant mark in UFC. One of the forefathers of the UFC, if you will. And I'm talking about, there's only one beast. When you say the beast, you know immediately who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Mr. Dan Severn, who is here to join me today on the Swerve. How you doing, Mr. Severn?
Top of the morning, actually, Vince. I'm doing fantastic. If I was doing anything better, it'd probably be criminal.
Yeah, now, Mr. Severn, I have to ask you this. As soon as you came on my television screen, listen, you're looking at Vince Russo now. You could see Vince Russo is slowly but surely turning into Santa Claus with all the gray hair and everything going on. Bro, you look like you haven't aged a day since the last time I seen you, probably 15 years ago.
I'll simply say this there, Vince. Only my hairdresser knows for sure what color my hair is. But rest assured, this past November, December, I finally let it go to its natural color. And let's say that you have more pepper in your stuff than what I have. So it's I always say that the curtains and the carpet all matches itself right now. Eyebrows, the mustache, the hair. You got to do it all when you walk out there. Otherwise, you look like kind of a freakosaurus.
Now, Mr. Severn, you know who you always reminded me of? And I'm sure you get this all the time. I'm sure you do, because I was always a huge fan of his. And even when I work with you, you reminded me so much of him. Bro, every time I see you, I think of the great Freddie Mercury. How many times have you heard that?
I was kind of hoping maybe Tom Selleck right now.
Freddie Mercury was a good-looking man. Now, has anybody ever told you that before?
Well, let's just put it this way. I've had it brought up at different times. I remember one of the first times that Tank Abbott was throwing a couple of zingers my way. at the time, I could not really recall who exactly Freddie Mercury was, although I had listened to the song and stuff like that quite a few times to his band. I simply knew it was not a compliment coming from him.
No, well, I say that as a compliment because he is an idol of mine. He was a great entertainer, as you yourself were, in a much different ring. Now, we're here to talk about, Dan has written a book, The Realest Guy in the Room. It is out electronically right now. The hard copy, the hard edition, will be out soon. Now, Dan, let me ask you this first, before we get into this illustrious career. So many things I want to talk about, both UFC and, of course, the WWE. How difficult was it? I wrote a couple of books, Dan, and it was the hardest thing I ever had to do. How difficult was that process for you?
Actually, Vince, was not difficult whatsoever. My biggest problem is I had too much content. I will say that I have been writing a book, or probably better what, I've been writing memoirs for probably easily over 3 decades, maybe closer to 4 decades, of just in my youth of trips that I simply knew that one day when I'm around, 90 or 100 years of age, I may want to reflect on back, and I know that all my mental faculties probably aren't going to be there. So I kept thinking, I'm going to write a few of these stories on down, and literally what I have is I have a file of over 1,000 pages. But to give you an idea, on one of those pages there might be 3 or 4 mini paragraphs. An example, one paragraph it might say Leipzig, East Germany, Russian negotiations, lots of vodka, and those 4 or 5 lines. Trust me, that's a great story too. But those 4 or 5 lines represents probably a 15 to 20 page story. Well, first off, there isn't an East Germany anymore, but there used to be, and so I always tell people I have been around competing for quite a few years, quite a few decades. I always tell people I started my amateur wrestling career in 1969, but then by 1971 I was teaching the sport of amateur wrestling. I won my first national title by 1972, and I always ask most people that are interviewing me that, and you were born when? But it's just my way of saying that I've been around I've been competing longer than most of the people I've stepped into the cage or square circle have been alive. Then if you would just go at timetables, by 1976 I'm the number 1 recruit in the United States at my weight class for amateur wrestling. I go to college for a full scholarship. Jump forward just 2 more decades. By 1996 I'm the number 1 cage fighter in the world. Jump ahead, 2016. I came back out of retirement for 1 more match for Ken Shamrock. There's over 4 decades alone right there that I've surpassed. And I think that's one of the greatest testimonials to any athlete is that test of time. There's a lot of guys that they'll do a onesie, twosies, a flash in the pan, and they're gone. I just simply tell people I've been terrorizing athletes for decades, and the real kicker here is I'm not done.
Yeah, I can tell by the condition you're in. I mean, again, people are going to be able to see this on video. I mean, you look absolutely tremendous, but you just covered 40 years in about 60 seconds. We got a lot of catching up to do before we get there.
Well, that's, like I said, that's just the highlights, just to throw out the hook there to see if people are biting on anything here yet.
Yeah. Now, Dan, I'm always interested in this, and I'll tell you what. You grew up in Michigan, correct?
Yes.
Now, I'm always interested in this. Listen, I was a kid, I grew up in New York, and, I grew up a huge baseball fan and loving baseball because, the Mets and the Yankees, they were everywhere you went. Baseball was huge in New York. When somebody gets into wrestling, I'm pretty tight with Kurt Angle, and obviously I've spoken to, Scott Steiner and a few people that were really into amateur wrestling. Now, listen, as a kid, you can't turn on a television set and really see amateur wrestling. Were you hooked into it? Because I know amateur wrestling is huge in Michigan. I understand that. Is that why you were drawn to it, or were you just the kid beating up all the other kids when you were growing up?
Well, no, actually, I was probably that chubby, docile kid. This is really who I was, probably more of a mama's boy. Like anybody else in those younger ages, I just was trying different types of sports just to see what was going to click for me. I spent a lot more time in those early years with baseball, with basketball. I just did not possess the same type of skills. Ironically, how I ended up ever getting introduced into amateur wrestling in the first place was there was a big flu epidemic that hit our school system. And here I am in junior high, 7th grade, and I have a couple of my buddies who are on the wrestling team. They said, and they come to me and they say, "Hey Dan, can you come out and fill in a weight class for us tonight? Otherwise, we have to forfeit it." And here I am thinking I'm a strong, young, strapping farm kid. I'm thinking I'll show whoever a thing or two here about some wrestling. Well, I went out to wrestle twice that night, and Vince, I got beat both times, got pinned both times. So I let my buddies down. Kind of embarrassed myself in the process, but at least I was doing something. Whereas on the basketball team, because basketball and wrestling, they coincide same exact time of year for seasons.
Right.
at least I'm doing something. Whereas in basketball, I did not possess the skills to be able to dribble a ball, look away at a defender, and still have that basketball underneath my hand. So I just went out for wrestling then.
Yeah, Dan, but that's very, very, very interesting because, Dan, I would think if your buddy said, listen, we need a wrestler for this weight class, you say, sure, I'll do it. You go out and do it, and you lose 2 matches. Now, I'm sure probably 90% of the people that went through that and literally lost their first 2 matches, I'm sure a lot of people would have said, you know what, this isn't for me, and moved on. Now, how did the losing affect you in a positive manner?
Well, I'm not sure how it made me want to go out and do it more. At least how I looked upon it, at least I'm doing something now. I'm out there on the mats. I'm doing something irregardless. And what I started to notice about that I enjoyed more is that in a lot of team sports, I didn't really notice this as much, but I did have a few observations that a lot of it boils down to the opinion of a coach. But not only just the opinion of a coach, but also I saw the influencing and manipulative ways of some of the adult dads who are being buddy-buddy to the coach so that their son gets more playing time. And again, let's say, fast forward this, I've had 5 children of my own. And I have had the same thing to have witnessed to where, again, you have individuals, because I don't even like to use the word coach, you have individuals that have held the title of a coach who have literally have played God over children in a very manipulative way and in a very hurtful way that young men and women that had actually great potential never realized that because of the coach either being very easily influenced or the fact that they were not coaches in the first place. And that's had I known some of the things, if I could have looked in that crystal ball and saw what was destined for some of my children, I probably would have never moved to the Coldwater area just for that one reason of some of the things that my kids had to go through. Not all of them, but just some of them. With some of these coaches, and these coaches are still around, and when they see me, they turn and they walk the other way because they know that I don't like them. I make it pretty well known.
Dan, let me tell you this. If I knew you didn't like me, I'd run the other way, bro. I would. As a matter of fact, I don't think I'd live in the same state as you.
Well, funny part though, Vince, I actually have a teaching degree from Arizona State, and I always sign up for substitute teaching. So I periodically will go into these different schools, and I will go into the faculty lounge. I walk the streets. I walk the halls of these high schools, the junior highs, elementary. The funniest one was for 2 months, I was a kid. I was actually 2nd grade. I had to take over a class of the female teacher went out on maternity leave. At first, I thought I was only taking over for a few days. Turns out I'm there for basically 2 months. And this was shortly after the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie came out, Kindergarten Cop. So I had all these teachers. Because first off, I'm like there's only one other male instructor, period.
Right.
And this gentleman had to be, in his early 60s, and here I am, big, broad, strappy stuff like this. And, it was interesting dynamics, but I really enjoy doing actually the substitute teaching still.
Yeah. Now, Dan, okay, so now, you lose the 2 matches, but now you kind of get the bug a little bit. Now you start getting into the wrestling a little bit, even though it wasn't really in the game plan. Now, Dan, was there a point where like a light bulb went off or an incident or a match where all of a sudden in your mind, I'm going to be doing this for the next, 50 years of my life? Was there an incident where you knew this is what I was made to do?
Well, I'll say that there was never one that would come out to say, I'm going to do this for the next 50 years of my life. So no, but I'll say that my freshman year in high school, I had the head wrestling coach was one of my instructors for like a political science class. and I remember seeing this stack of amateur wrestling magazines on his desk. And I asked him if I could look through a couple of them, and he said, sure. So as I'm looking through these magazines, it's describing all these different aspects of the sport of amateur wrestling. It's talk about weight reduction programs, weightlifting programs, stretching exercises, weightlifting exercises, the mind, positive thinking, things, all kinds of stuff that I had never dreamt of that involved the sport. And I realized at that point in time how much more complicated this sport was, the setting of goals and things of that nature. And I think that really was an eye-opener for me. But I'll say that it really wasn't until my sophomore year. My freshman year, I had friends that had older brothers. And their older brothers went into military for basically 4 years and came out and then went to college on the GI Bill. Well, I have 7 other brothers and sisters. I'm second on the totem pole, as I tell people. I would have never thought of asking my parents for money because there was no money to be had. My freshman year, I'm just simply thinking, well, I'll probably, upon high school graduation, I will go into the military, come back out, go to college on GI Bill. But by my sophomore year, I started to have a little bit of success to where I had the first couple college coaches paying me a little bit of attention, and that's when I realized there might be a plan B, I should say, that maybe if I could really hone my skills, if I could really improve myself a great deal, there's this opportunity behind door number 2 now.
Dan, I get the feeling, again, having many conversations with Kurt Angle, like one of the things that really, stands out to me when I see like collegiate wrestlers, and Greco-Roman wrestlers is, the one word that always stands out to me is discipline. You have to really be disciplined. Was that something you already were going into the sport, or is that something that you developed and that came with becoming a great high school and collegiate wrestler?
It came with it. I did not have that in the beginning. The structure or the work ethic, I'll say, was being instilled into me because I grew up on a farm. Mm-hmm. So, a farm, a mixture of crops and animals. So I had to awaken earlier, and I had to do my chores. As my father would say, do you like to eat there, son? I go, yes, Dad. Well, so do the animals. Do you like to drink there, son? Well, so do the animals. So each morning you had to go out there and take care of the animals before literally you came in, and then you got taken care of. But then you had to be ready then to go to school. So whereas most kids, they just had to get ready and just get out the door and go to school, we had chores that had to be done, and that was not easy. You named the animal, we raised it all, and you never picked up any kind of pet names because sooner or later it was going to end up on your plate. Right. But it was, talk about a great life of growing up. Well, I tell people that I ate organic food. It was all right there between just your own farm fresh eggs and your own cattle that were being slaughtered, chickens, pigs, ducks, geese, you name it, all that type of stuff right there. But we also had crops during the spring, summer, fall aspect. But that work ethic, no matter how late of a practice you would have that day, you still had to come home and take care of your chores. You still had to water the animals. You still had to feed the animals, regardless of that kind of stuff. So I'll say that there was a work ethic that was instilled into me just because of how I was raised. But as I creeped into my high school career more and more, and the more that I read of these scholastics, amateur wrestling magazines, that's when I started setting goals and that. And I'll say that determination or that structure or that discipline. Also, another great word for that is called sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sacrificing time away from family and friends. And I still, that's my speech that I give to a lot of young people today. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice in order to succeed? I actually think it's easier now than ever to succeed, just because again, just my opinion, it's such a softer society that is coming on up. I think it's easier to succeed now, especially with the internet and all the tools that are there that you can click on, and I can see technique after technique. I can watch videos. And just there's so much more information that is at your disposal.
Now, Dan, one thing that I was a little surprised, you're growing up in Michigan, and literally, I know this through Scott Steiner, and Rob Steiner. That's a hotbed of collegiate wrestling, but yet you wind up going to Arizona State. Was that strictly scholarship? Because I would think, you were in a place that was the hotbed of collegiate wrestling. How did you wind up going to Arizona State?
Well, I was, by 1976 is when I graduated out of high school. I was the number one, whatever call it, draft pick. I was at my weight class for the entire United States, and I even had a couple of congressional nominations, so I could go on into the Air Force Academy. And that my GPA was great. I always kept about a 3.2 to 3.3 type of a GPA. So academically, I was just fine. My older brother Dave and myself were what made each other good in high school. He ended up with a full scholarship at Arizona State. I still took the full allotment of visitations, collegiately wise, because I was being trouted by Dan Gable at the University of Iowa. I was being trouted by Russ Heltson at the University of Wisconsin at the time. So some of the biggest names in amateur wrestling I was being recruited by, and I'd say that the big influencing factor is like my brother and I, we came really from nothing. When my high school was named Montrose Hill McCoy High School, Montrose, Michigan. They had never had a state champion before my older brother became the very first one, and then I became the second one. So it was he and I that we would travel all around the state of Michigan. On any given Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and during the spring season, once the high school season comes to an end, there's a continuation of folk style wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling, and freestyle wrestling that would take place. In a normal season, we were getting right around 50 matches. But during the spring and summer portion, my brother and I were averaging an additional 100 matches.
Wow.
So the reality is, by the time I'm a sophomore, am I a sophomore? Just sheer experience already, I'm a junior, borderline senior. But then by the time I'm a sophomore, I'm this. By the time I'm a junior, so when it comes to sheer number of matches, experience, again, not winning a lot in the beginning, but the more and more I kept doing things, the better my skills, going to wrestling camps, going to wrestling clinics, just all of that together helped out a great deal. So that's I kind of went way all over the place on your answer right there, but there was a work ethic, a drive, but then also this chance to go to college on a full athletic scholarship, and literally, I have 4 brothers. So I'm okay. So all 5 males went to college on full academic scholarship.
Wow, that's tremendous.
When I talk to people about education, for example, I do a lot. I talk about the importance of education. I do that a lot of area high schools, junior highs. Talk about how to dedicate yourself to the academics. I always say, let me use my own family as this analogy. My grandfather, for all intents and purposes, would have been classified as illiterate. The man could not read, could not write. When he would go to local granary to sell his crops, stuff like this, they would pull out the ledger and he would make his mark. But the man was a genius in his mind of what he could put together and stuff like that. And then there's that's my grandfather's generation. My father was the baby of 12 living children. I say living children because during this time period, you did not go to hospital to have your child. You had your child at home with a midwife. Mm-hmm. So there was 12 living children. There was a few others that got buried out on the farm. He was the first of the 12 to ever take a couple college courses. He was working in one of the automotive plants there in Flint, Michigan. And by taking some more classes, he was able to upgrade himself and go into the supervision management type of roles right there. Then I go, 3rd generation, my father has 8 children. My mother and father have 8 children. All 8 of us have college degrees. So talk about upgrading a family from.
Wow.
I mean, literally, when I say my grandfather was illiterate, but my grandmother was thrown out of school.
Wow.
Because she grew up on the fishing docks of Bayport. She had a sailor's mouth on her.
Oh boy, yeah.
So
yeah. Now, Dan, you go to Arizona, very successful, 2-time All-American. You get to go to the Olympic trials to qualify. Now, from what I'm reading, you had to qualify against an individual by the name of Lou Bannock, and there was some kind of a very controversial finish where you could have went over, but this kept you from qualifying for the Olympics. You had to go in as a replacement, whatever the case may be. But this guy went on to win the gold medal. So in other words, you're looking as a guy as an alternative, win the gold medal, that he beat you in a highly controversial finish. So you could have been a gold medalist. The first thing I want to ask you was, tell me about the controversy surrounding that match. What happened?
it was the first time that, as I say, and the last time, but the first time that they ever allowed videotaping of wrestle-offs. They brought in the top 6 guys per weight class. And so it would be number 6 versus number 5, best 2 out of 3. Winner advances on, 5 versus 4, on. And I had finished second behind Lou at the national tournament. So I'm basically in the number 2 spot. So I wrestle off against number 3, beat him, and now it's Lou and I for the actual Olympic team berth. He beats me in the first match. I beat him in the second match. Very closely skilled level. Third and final match, through a series of techniques or a flurry, the referees score the wrong points. So instead of me winning the match, I'm now losing the match. Which, I mean, this is the final, final 30 seconds of rally here right now. So instead of me being able to sit back and wait for him to come to me, the roles were reversed. I still actually have those tapes. I mean, it's like, well, Vince, quite honestly, you and I would not even be having this conversation here today. Had everything gone the way it should have gone for me, I was going to retire from athletics altogether by 1984. My whole goal was I was going to put all my eggs in one basket. 1984, I was going to win the gold medal. I was going to retire all on that note and be done with it. But like I said, that controversial point in my career, I'll say it I don't know if I can come up with the right words. It surged me on. I guess I was kind of lost for a time period right there. A lot of people were impressed with what I did in the UFC when I entered in that as of 1994. I always tell people by 1994, that was called Dan Severn Residue. Mm-hmm. From 1984 to 1986, let's say I had issues. Because of this controversial loss, I had issues. So when for a 2-year period of time, I performed my own exorcism at the cost of quite a few opponents' careers, bodies. Oh, they were all legal techniques I did.
Right.
But I knew the parameters of the body's limitations, and I pushed it beyond, and I did end a number of guys' careers. But I was an angry individual. All legal techniques, but I knew the range of motion.
Well, see, Dan, this is very interesting to me, and I think this is a lesson to a lot of people. Watching this and listening to this, especially kids. I want to get in your head a little bit now, Dan, because you set a goal for yourself. And you mentioned earlier, very goal orientated, and in your mind, 1984, I'm going to win the Olympic gold medal, and then I'm going to be done with it. Very controversial. You lose a match you probably should have won. That guy goes on to win the gold medal while you're an alternative, so you have to watch it. Now for the next 2 years, you're a very, very, very angry Dan Severn. But again, Dan, this is a perfect case in point where the average person would have probably quit. The average person would have said, this was my goal, this was my hopes and dreams, I got screwed, F this. Thrown in the towel and moved on to something else. So once you got through this 2-year period of anger, what was it that motivated you? What was that next goal?
You know, boys, I tell you what, I think it's because I was still in the coaching ranks at that point in time. I was still, by 84, I was still at Arizona State University. I was a student athlete for 5 years. I redshirted 1 year, and then I was assistant wrestling coach there for an additional 5 years. So 10 years at Arizona State before taking a job at Michigan State. I was still there. I'm still working out on basically a daily basis, probably sometimes even 2 or 3 times a day, just depending on what time of the year it was, because I was, being an assistant coach, you typically you're with the athletes more and more with them and taking them to practices, taking them to the various workouts. Whereas the head coach, he's doing more of the recruiting and things of that nature. So I was probably still in good shape, and I was still just continued to compete because maybe being that lost individual, I wasn't certain really what I wanted to do, but I kept on competing. And I was, still doing well in a lot of things, but it's kind of like, it was something to do. It was something to fill my time. Although I'll say that I jumped into a few other things. At that same token, I jumped into judo. I jumped into sambo. And on top of the wrestling, I was doing. Sure, I did freestyle Greco most of my career. I kept doing freestyle Greco, and whenever the occasional folk style type of tournament would come up, but. I was still racking out quite a few matches in a very dominant type style. So I was thinking that, well, maybe it's still not too late. Maybe I can hang in there for one more round. I say it like that because I've defied age barriers, both going up and again coming on down. Going on up. As a senior in high school, 17 years of age, I go to my very first Olympic trials. Whereas I'd done well enough to make it to the national tournament, but now I'm kind of at the national tournament. I'm kind of blown away because I'm not there amongst any of my peers. Now I'm going up against collegiate wrestlers, coaches, world champions, Pan American champions, Olympic champions, and it just kind of boggled my mind that these are men that in these last 4 years I've been reading about in my Scholastic Wrestling magazines. There are moves that are named after them, and here I am. I'm out on the mats. I'm like, and then I go, here it is. I always tell people that, not only did I used to use the Ben Peterson, or what they call the Peterson roll, I actually wrestled Ben Peterson. I wrestled his brother John Peterson. I'm thinking, it's like going, how many people could say that? In their career.
So now, Dan, while you're still, competing, now explain to me the bridge to UFC, because UFC now is just kind of starting. So, are you keeping your eye on this presentation of fighting? How does the career with UFC begin?
Well, it began after the professional wrestling. My first profession is professional wrestling. I started that as of the 1992 Olympics. As of the 1992 Olympics, a new rule comes down from the United States Olympic Committee that allows athletes to be both amateur and professional simultaneously, as long as you are not involved in a high school athletic program or a collegiate athletic program, because you're still going to be ruled by High School Athletic Association rules or the NCAA rules. I was well past my collegiate eligibility, so I could have my cake and eat it too. A gentleman, his professional name was Denny Cass, real name Dennis Kasperwitz. He was the president of the Michigan Wrestling Club. After I left Arizona State, I took a job at Michigan State. After I left Michigan State, I was the head wrestling coach for the Michigan Wrestling Club, so I traveled around the state of Michigan working with top elite athletes for both Greco-Roman and freestyle. Dennis Kasprowitz was the president, but he was also a professional wrestler. So once our club duties were done, I would always stick around the extra 10, 15 minutes, and I would just chit-chat with him, just trying to find out more information. And this went on for a while, and I go, Denny, I think I might want to try this. And he paints a very deep, dark, dismal picture of the industry. He says, think about over the weekend. He says, you still want to do it? He goes, I'll take you to this place. So I thought, I really didn't even think much about over the weekend. I basically, come Monday, yes, I'm ready to go. So he takes me down to Al Snow's Body Slammers Gym, which was located in Lima, Ohio at that time. He introduces me to Al, and I just kind of hit it off with Al, and I started doing some training there. So the professional wrestling came first. I used my real name. I used my real amateur wrestling credentials. I really wasn't even involved with profession all that long before I started doing matches. I was really very aggressively pursuing this, but on the flip side there, though, Vince, I did not tell a single one of my amateur wrestling buddies, because they would have looked down upon me, because at that point in time, amateur wrestlers really frowned upon professional wrestling. But if you fast forward to today, and you look at, you have a lot of guys that are crossing over between the two industries, whether it be mixed martial artists or a professional wrestlers, back and forth. So at that time, I told no one. And only after having a half a dozen matches, I happened to be on a show, and a gal by the name of Candy Divine was on there, and she asked me, was those credentials real? I said, yes, they were. Well, she says, well, my boyfriend, the dirty white boy, Tom Burton, basically works with this group out of Japan, and I basically gave her a business card and an athletic resume. I basically was carrying them because I was looking for work anywhere. And I get a phone call 3 days later. 10 days later, I'm down in Nashville, Tennessee for a tryout. 30 days later, I'm in Tokyo, Japan. Didn't have a clue what I was doing. Here I am in front of like 12,000 people. I don't have a clue what I'm doing. All I know is my Asian opponent kicked me half a dozen times really, really hard. I'm thinking, forget this. I close the distance. I grab him, and I just do this aerial assault, just throwing him, launching like a rag doll all over the place. And the crowd just goes freaking nuts. And even the Japanese interpreter, he looks at me and goes, Don Saban, you are going to become superstar in Japan. And I'm thinking, I don't know about that superstar thing. I'm just not going to let anyone just tee off on me like that, And that was literally my very first experience. But that's how it kind of morphed from professional wrestling to this strong style, UWF type style, to then jumping into some tough men contests, to then a buddy showing me a couple of the UFCs on an old VHS tape.
Let me back up for 1 second. I want to ask you this. It's funny, Dan, because I do a show now where I go back and I look at the Attitude Era. And every week we review a show from the Attitude Era. So I'm watching a lot of Dan Severn, Ken Shamrock, and Steve Blackman lately. Here's the thing that amazes me about all three of you guys, when it comes to the transition, from collegiate wrestling, shoot fighting to professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is a work. It's a lot different from real competition. But yet, man, when I watch you guys perform in a wrestling rink, Dan, you guys didn't miss a beat. You guys picked up the art of professional wrestling so easily. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, my God, there has to be some kind of a learning curve. But all three of these guys just seem to morph into professional wrestling so easily. Was it that easy for you, or was there a lot to learn being that you were working?
The hardest part for me, Vince, I can't speak for anyone else, but the hardest part for me was I was always used to looking across that mat or looking across that cage and seeing an opponent. Now, in the wacky world of professional wrestling, Now I have to look across there and realize this is my partner. And whereas before, I was really good about tuning out the crowd, because being on a lot of U.S. teams going abroad, lots of countries do not like Americans. So I was pretty used to being booed as I was wearing whatever flag type, adornment type of singlet, walking out onto the mat, just being booed, being things thrown at. So it was almost like I was used to being sort of this heel type character, even though I wasn't a heel. It's just this propaganda image that all these foreign countries had of Americans. We just that we have so much going for us and stuff like this that a lot of countries are just envious. So I was used to tuning out a crowd, but whereas now in this professional wrestling industry or in the work industry, I am now having to listen to the crowd to hear what they're biting on. Because I even refer to it now, it's kind of like when you walk out into different parts of the United States, it's like you have to dig into your fishing tackle box to find out what's the crowd going to bite on tonight. Are they going to be going for grubs, for spinners, or you just don't know what's going to work. What works in the north may not work in the south, east versus west, or a crowd that's used to seeing more hardcore type matches, and here you're trying to show them a match with just wrestling, scientific type style. It just all depends. So that was a learning curve, and even still to this day, do I work snug? Oh yes, I still work awfully snug, but I always tell people, rest assured, you are in the safest hands that you'll ever be in. Yeah. Because one of the number one rules of professional wrestling is you protect me and I protect you. And that's where, ironically, I still do a lot of appearances on road a lot. I travel with 4 belts. The 4 most recognizable belts. I have 3 from the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and I have the NWA belt, proudly displayed right up in front there. And when people see it, they see the UFC belts, they recognize what that is right up hand, and they're like, well, NWA, they're like, what's that stand for? I go, National Wrestling Alliance. And they're like, well, what kind of wrestling is that? I go, well, similar to what you probably see on television with TNA, WWE, things of that nature. And they all say basically the same thing. You mean that fake stuff? I go, obviously you understand these 3 belts back here. And they'll go, oh yeah, that's the real deal. I go, then why is it that I've been hurt far worse in my professional wrestling career than I have been in all of my cage fights combined? And they look at me and they're almost baffled. I go, never say the word fake. It may not be a real athletic contest, but professional wrestlers are some of the most incredible athletes, doing some of the most incredible athletic maneuvers without the aid of a safety net. And that's what that's what I say all the time that about the sport.
Yeah. All right, now Dan, I want to get to WWF, but I want to ask a couple questions about UFC. Obviously, that's your bread and butter. Now, you talk about, you go to Al, you start professional wrestling a little, you go over to Japan, tough man contest, you're doing a little bit of everything. But like Dan, I listen, I gotta ask you something, bro, because to me, like, this just isn't normal. All right, like you're a competitor, you're a wrestler, you're a fighter, tough man, Japan, all this stuff. But now all of a sudden, Dan, you're presented to and introduced to a freaking octagon. 2 men locked inside a cage like 2 freaking animals. Like to me, this is a whole other animal. When the thought first comes to you of a cage and being locked inside a cage with another human being and the object is to destroy each other, bro, there's got to be a point in time where, like, there has to be a second where you say, well, wait a minute, like, this might not be for me. No?
Well, let me set the stage right now. At this time period, pay-per-views were not prevalent like they are today. Back during this time period, in a state like Michigan, pay-per-views would only be seen in the major metropolitan areas. So the Detroit greater metropolitan area might be aware of it, maybe up in the Lansing, the Grand Rapids, but I'm living out in little old Podunk, Coldwater, Michigan at this time. So I don't know this thing exists. A buddy of mine watches the first 2 UFCs. He copies them on an old VHS tape, and he shows it to me, and he says, you ought to think about doing this. Now I'm seeing people being soccer kicked in the face, teeth are flying out, and I turn to him, I go, these are not exactly skills I possess. But then he says, but look at this skinny little guy doing jiu-jitsu. Of course, he was referring to Hoist Gracie. And then as I'm watching this taking place, I'm thinking, I'd never really been exposed to jiu-jitsu before, but I'd done a little bit of judo, and I kept thinking, well, it's what I always refer to as it's pajama grappling is what we're going to be doing. I can grab clothing, whereas in amateur wrestling you can't grab singlets or nothing like that. So I thought to myself, well, realistically, a man's got to be within arm's distance in order to punch me. He's got to be within legs range in order to kick me, knee me, elbow me. I go, all I've got to do is stay back out of his range. I kept it the most simplest type of concept right there. And basically, I'm like, sure, let's do this. There really wasn't a whole lot of thought. It was just that thought pattern. Why not give this a whirl? Now, but did I tell anybody? No. I did not tell a single family member whatsoever. Nobody, no wife, no parents, nobody. The only people that knew were Al Snow and a couple of other workout partners he had. Professional wrestling trainees. Mm-hmm. I was the last second fill-in. Someone got hurt. Someone pulled out. I still don't even know the story to this day. The UFC contacts me. You're in. Again, like I said, structured. Here's my planner. I'm going over all my stuff even for today. I've always been busy. I fulfilled the few commitments I had to take care of, and I went and I trained at Al's place because a professional wrestling ring was the closest thing I could come to a cage. Now, you fast forward to today. You can go to any size community, big or small. You can find a gym with either a full-size cage or at least a section of fence, and they'll simply say, sure, we train our athletes in cage wall tactics. They don't. It's colorful ambiance is all it is. So I'm down there with Al. I've got Al and two of his other trainees and one old pair of boxing gloves between the three of them. And all they're doing is they keep swapping out. Once one gets tired, he gives them to the other one. Next one gets tired, goes to the other. They're punching, they're kicking. They're trying to do whatever submissions that they're making up or knew how to do on me. I don't like to get hit. I'm staying out of range. I'm closing distance. I'm clinching them. I'm taking them down. And I'm slapping on amateur wrestling moves. Now, amateur wrestling moves are off the principles of leverage. Now, this leverage doesn't feel good, so I'll just say leverage equals pain. But the sheer fact that I can take an amateur wrestling move and turn it illegal on top of all this. So that's all I was doing, was simply doing amateur wrestling techniques to these guys, make them scream or squawk. That was my training camp. 5 days, Vince, 5 days, an hour and a half a day. That's all I did. Literally, if anyone would have been there with a camera, it would have been slapstick comedy because it was the most comical training camp because these guys are cutting promos on each other. They're screaming and squawking because that's the last thing in the world they really want to do inside of a professional wrestling ring is get and believe it or not, Vince, I'm playing nice because I've always had this demeanor about me. Go, you always play nice with your workout partners. They're not your opponent, so I'm even playing nice, but they're still screaming and squawking. Yeah. But I never trained a single strike. I never trained a single submission. So literally 5 days, an hour and a half a day, I show up at the UFC. They even, as they're getting your height, your weight, stuff like this, because they tell a tape, but weight didn't matter because it was unlimited. You could weigh whatever you wanted, but they still want to at least be able to say he stands 6'2", he weighs 265 pounds. They want to be at least be able to say all this kind of stuff right there. But then they asked me, well, what's your martial art? I had never been asked that question before. So out of the blue, my mouth opens up, and I simply say, oh, I'm an American wrestler. And now you think I was puzzled. The person I told it to looked at me even more puzzled. They're like going, they actually said, I've never heard that. What exactly is that? I said, I'm not sure. I'm making this up as I go. Just watch me. And honestly, Vince, that's what I said to the person. And because when I walked out there, I've actually never been in a physical altercation in my entire life. But I have been a competitor my entire life, which means I know how to focus in on rules and regulations, what can happen, what's not allowed to take place. So I have that competitor's mindset, for sure.
But then there has to be the first time you're setting foot in that cage. There has to be an intimidation factor. You've got, I mean, you're in the middle of this cage now for the first time. What's going on in your mind at that moment? There's a long walk to the octagon. So literally and then you got all these people that are screaming, hollering, and jeering, this, that, the whole 9 yards. You get there, and as you're in there, you hear that door kind of clang shut, and you hear the deadbolt slide and click into place. Then there's that waiting period as they start to make that announcement. Vince, I'll simply say that my international wrestling career served me oh so well because I was used to going into hostile territory. I knew I'm in an Eastern Bloc country. I'm going to have a Bulgarian referee. I've got a Czechoslovakian side referee. I've got someone from East Germany over here. I know that I'm going to be screwed 3 different ways here right now on this. I just know this going on into. So my international career served me well. Even when Big John, the referee, give you an idea of how at peace or at ease I was. Big John, the referee, he comes over, basically goes over each corner guy, each fight as they're coming on in. He goes like over to them, and he has his routine down pat. If you're in trouble with this, that, he goes. If you can't tap, he goes, makes them have eye contact, vocal, blah blah. He goes through this very professional routine, and at the end of it, he goes, "Are there any questions?" And then he'll go from you, then he'll turn to whoever your corner person is, and then go into his routine there. So as he's finishing up with me, he simply says, "Are there any questions?" I don't say nothing, so he turns away to start to talk to my corner man, Al. Now, you got to think about this. I got Al, professional wrestling Al Snow. He's my corner man. What's he going to say? Did he have his head with him?
Is he going to say drop down tackle, clothesline? What's Al going to tell me? I don't know, but that's just, when you think about this, it's comedy of what I've got going. So Big John turns away, I simply just blurt out, "Where did all that money go that my parents paid for piano lessons?" He said, because Big John says, he says, "Dad," he goes, "I heard it." He said, "But by the time I turned back and looked at you," he goes, "there's no way I thought it came out of your mouth because you had your game face on."
Right.
So it's like, but that's all part of the. I'll say that the similarities between professional wrestling and amateur, or I'd say between professional wrestling and the mixed martial arts world, there is still that aspect of presentation. Mm-hmm. There is that way of keeping your game face on, the way that how you conduct yourself, your posture, the way you carry yourself to that cage. There's so many different ways that you can intimidate an opponent, and I was a great intimidator in the process of just by not saying that, not engaging into this little banter back and forth. They can do all the banter and forth, back and forth. I'll simply say that when we step in the cage, you've got all the time in the world to make all these claims that you were saying with that mouth into reality. I don't have to say nothing.
Now, Dan, I would have to think there were some fights where you got in a position where you were concerned for your health. Like, had that ever happened to you during a fight where things went terribly wrong and now I'm hurt and this can turn out really bad?
Well, no, actually, each time I walk out there, knowing that, especially in the beginning, the product today, mixed martial arts, has approximately 47 rules. Weight classes, time periods known as rounds, wear gloves. Back at that no-holds-barred era, there was only the 2 rules. Do not bite your opponent do not stick fingers in the eye socket, into the rules. But even then, these were not rules for disqualifications. They just were highly recommended. Well, they also said you didn't have to wear a mouthpiece or cup, but they highly recommended it.
Yeah.
If you were to watch one match of Keith Hackney versus Joe San, where Keith Hackney socked Joe San about 6-7 straight times in the lower extremities right there, people start thinking a cup is a good thing to wear. But they're just it was if people were to see the two products side by side, see what today's product looks like, and then see what yesteryear, they would watch more of the yesteryear because it was like the wild, wild west. You had weight classes of misproportion. I think the biggest one was over 400-pound weight difference of a sumo versus the other guy. But David slayed Goliath that night. But you had, again, the only two rules. You had people that were just elbowing people in the head, kneeing them this way, stomping on their heads. It was that wild, wild west, and it was unlimited time to do this kind of stuff.
Dan, did you ever go into a fight scared ever?
Well,
or you can't. I mean, you can't. If you go in mentally afraid, even an ounce of fear, I would assume you lost the fight before it even started.
I agree with what you're saying there. There are times when I have taken matches where I know that this match is not in my best interest whatsoever. Things, just like you said, things could go horribly wrong in this match, and because it was during this no-holds-barred era, I could get my head split wide open in the process, and I could have lasting medical issues. As there is right now, I see some of the guys that I've been to some of these little mixed martial arts reunions that have taken place, and there's guys that are 15 years my junior that have not weathered the storm near what I have weathered the storm here-wise, and I keep wondering, what are they going to be like by the time they hit my age? Will they hit my age in the first place? But at the same token, I say this though, Vince, on the flip side, Muhammad Ali left the ring fully intact. It wasn't until years later. So I always tell people, maybe I'm intact right now, but once again, the test of time. As each time passes, will my own wiring come loose, and will I be sitting in a corner just babbling and drooling down my chin here one day? I hope not. Yeah. But there is that possibility, because head trauma is a very big thing in the football world. You had the one movie, Concussion. It's in high school football. It's even in wrestling. They've got it. Boxing has been there for quite some time, and even in mixed martial arts and professional wrestling now. All aspects.
Dan, that was my next question. It's a perfect segue. Dan, you are as sharp as a tack, like right now, with the type of combat that you were involved. How did you sidestep head trauma?
Wow. Once again, I'll say the exterior might look okay. I'm not certain about the interior, and that won't be until the test of time. But no, on the simple aspect, again, I'll brag for a second here. There's only 4 people in the world that have over 100 cage fights. I'm one of the 4. There's only 3 people in the world that have over 100 victories. I'm one of the 3. Now, the ironic part is I faced the other 3. I defeated the other 3. Closest one to my age is 15 years my junior. So in a lot of ways, I put myself in my own category because, as I said before, I defied age barriers coming on up. I'm defying age barriers coming on down. Even when you talk about professional wrestling, I was the oldest rookie ever at that point in time at 48 years of age when I finally signed up with the WWF. So I did not look my age nor do I act my age, but as I said, thank God for hair coloring and stuff like that. But,
Stop.
Maybe that should be my sponsor just for men,
Oh, stop with the hair coloring. All right, listen, let's turn to the WWE, because I have some questions, because, I had my head rocked a couple of times and I don't remember things so well. I'm going back now, and I'm looking, like I said, I'm looking at a lot of footage from the Attitude Era, and I could see now that mistakes were made. And I can see now, UFC was just starting to gain a little bit of popularity, and all of a sudden we're signing UFC type fighters. Like I said, you Shamrock, Steve Blackman. When I look at that immediately now, I say to myself, that was a mistake. Because you brought in 3 guys at the same time with a similar background. Somebody was going to get lost in the shuffle, whereas if it was just one guy, he would have been uniquely special. But bringing in 3 guys at the same time, I don't think that was such a great idea. Now, Dan, you got to refresh my memory about some of this stuff because I'm watching this and I don't remember. I know the Brawl for All. You won that first round match against the Godfather, but then I believe you withdrew from that. What were the circumstances behind that? Can you just refresh my memory a little bit?
Yeah, no problem, Vince. Well, basically, I don't remember whatever state or building that we're at the time. It was either for live Monday Night Raw or was it for a Tuesday night taping. I'm not sure. I can't remember that portion of it. But I remember that the various road agents and that, they brought us all into the cafeteria. And they were explaining this concept of this brawl for all, of these 3 1-minute rounds, and winner advancing, blah, blah, blah. But as they were making this, they said, and the only 2 people that are not allowed to be in it is Ken Shamrock and Dan Severn. So first off, we're not even allowed to be in it. So as soon as they tell me that, I'm like, I just walked out of the cafeteria because this meeting no longer has nothing to do with me. The brawl for all goes on for a couple weeks, and then I'm back in one of the locker room type areas, just kind of kicking back and relaxing to see, is my match going to materialize tonight or not? Because you got that dry easel there with all the tentative matches that are going to be on there. But if a match goes long, or if a promo goes long, there's certain main storylines that have to go through, and other matches just get scratched because of that. And so basically, I'm just back there relaxing, and one of the road agents comes up to me and says, "Hey Dan, how would you like to be in a brawl for all tonight?" I mean, that's how much notice I was given. I'm there. They go, "How would you like to be in a brawl for all tonight?" Not knowing that I've actually been on the road for four days prior to this, because a lot of people don't realize I was WWF's first non-exclusive athlete ever. I could work for anybody and everybody, but that was, we were in negotiations for almost 1 year. But at the same token, that's because, Vince and I think Jim Ross actually knew how old I was. Of this, I did not want to put all my eggs into one basket and only be there for 2 years, and all of a sudden I have to go out and re-engage the world here once again. I simply was like, give me kind of an unrestricted type of a work rate. I can keep a few other things going so that when my run comes to an end, I have other things I can just move on to. I've always kind of been that way. So things get agreed to. I'm there, as I said. The road agent comes up to me. Would you like to do a match? I simply said, against who and how much? He says, Godfather, throws me a price tag. I go, done. I said, but I tell him, I don't want to wear the 20-ounce gloves. And the road agent says to me, so, well, you can't go out there bare knuckled. I says, I will never throw a single punch, but I will show you exactly what a real wrestler can do. I will parry, I will clinch, I will throw, I will do this, that. And I said, I will embarrass him just to the point that, I will win the match just by simply doing that. So, but they make me wear the 20-ounce gloves. I go out there. I'm doing the best I can for clinch and throwing. I end up winning the match. And as I come back through, coming back through to the back right there just to get the gloves that off, same road agent comes right back up to me and says, well, now you're out. So this is strictly my hypothetical idea about all this, is that I think the brawl for all was kind of I'll just say some of the upper management, I think, was sitting around, might have been bored one day, and they're simply saying, jaw jackers saying, I think this guy's a real tough shooter in the first place. Oh, no, I think this guy's actually a much tougher shooter. And basically, through all this jaw jacking back and forth, well, let's find out.
No, Dan, you want to know you want to know the origins, because the idea came from me. And do you want to know how? Because you'll get a kick out of this. Okay. Dan, I was not a big fan of Justin Hawk Bradshaw because I always thought he was a big bully. I just always thought JBL was a bully. And we were in catering one day, and JBL makes the statement that if a big bar fight was held with every wrestler in the WWE locker room, I would walk out the only one standing. Now, keep in mind, Dan, I'm a writer, and I don't like this guy too much to begin with. And, bro, I know there's a lot of pretty tough dudes in the freaking locker room. So as soon as he says that to me, oh, yeah, if there were a bar fight, I would be the only one walking out of the bar. As soon as he says that to me, I'm like, oh, yeah, let's see. So sure enough, I go to the next creative meeting and I say, Vince, I had this conversation with JBL. I said, bro, I would really like to see that. That's exactly how the Brawl for All came about. But yeah, I want to hear, because I have no idea now what happened with you after you won the first fight. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, well, that was it. I mean, literally, I win the fight, I come back out, and the same road agent comes right back up to me and says, well, now you're out. No explanation, but I'll just say this. It was a good payday for one night's work. But it was, once again, in my opinion, like I said, I gave what I thought went through my mind, how it came about in the first place. I'm glad you gave me that clarification. But something told me that they said Shamrock and Severn is out. Someone started doing some boisterous talking and stuff like this. And the Godfather could take Dan Severn. Well, let's just see if we can make it happen. And the same token, if they would have known the 4 days I was doing previously, all the seminars, stuff like that I was doing, because I was not unlimited as to what I could do. I literally had my schedule a minimum of 30 days ahead of time. So I simply know if I'm going to fly into JFK or something like that, and there's going to be something at Madison Square Garden, I might fly in earlier that day and go do a seminar. I might go and then work my gig there with for the WWF, and then later that night go do an appearance at a sports bar. So literally, I'm pulling down 3 paychecks in 24 hours as opposed to pulling down 1.
Yeah.
But to me, that was being smart, being intelligent, because my time away from my family is my time away from my family. I might as well try to maximize the dollars that I can make from it.
Yeah. Dan, you know what it was? I guarantee, and I think you probably realize this, because this is the first time I'm hearing this. I don't know what happened. I don't remember that. That was not a creative decision. That came from above me. But I guarantee you, they did not want the shoot fighters making the wrestlers, exposing the wrestlers, and that's probably what they felt you did with the Godfather. You didn't want the gloves, and you just kind of going in there and toying with them. And I mean, the guy was a freaking killer. So that, to me, that's probably what happened.
Yeah, I overall, I simply look at that the whole concept of Brawl for did not really get the impact what they were looking for, because I mean, people are tuning in to professional wrestling to watch professional wrestling. They're not tuning in to watch an actual Brawl for All, mixed martial arts type of event. So that was my opinion why it kind of failed, and because I know it was supposed to do a couple of different aspects. It was supposed to help introduce Dr. Death, Steve Williams, and things of that nature, and it's kind of tough to have certain outcomes take place in the real world as opposed to if we're just doing the scripted world. And that's where the carryovers, I say all the time, professional wrestlers have made some of the best stunt people on top of being some of the best actors and actresses. And you gotta look at look what the Rock's doing today. Look what John Cena continues to do, and quite so many other professional wrestlers that have had so many different roles in the movie industry.
Well, Dan, I got to be honest with you. We got to agree to disagree, because I think it deemed to be very successful because JBL got his clock cleaned, and that's what I was in it for. So when he got knocked out by Bart Gunn, I was like, success. That's all I wanted to see. Now, Dan, walk me through this. Because, Dan, I was reading in the Wikipedia today about this. Dan, I did not remember any of this, and I know it's the truth. I know Dan Severn's telling the truth, but I was involved with so many things I don't remember. But I know it's the truth. But now I was reading, you wound up leaving the WWE for creative differences, and I want to talk about what those creative differences were that I read in a second, because I don't doubt it, I just forget it. But just a couple of weeks ago, I saw the gimmick with Owen Hart, where it looked like he did some permanent damage and they had to stretch you out and we never saw you again, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Was that done because at that time you had given your notice because you didn't like the creative direction? I don't remember why we did that. That's why I'm asking you.
No, it was, the things that were brought up about the creative differences came after. I think that might have been just a way of either getting me off television, just so that if they wanted to bring me back and they were pitching me, the heel gimmick is what they were doing at that point. I would say in the very beginning of my career with the WWF, I was used very, very well. And then I think somewhere along the line, I think they realized that there are no control mechanisms on Dan Severn. We can't stop him from working for WCW or ECW because they both existed. But at the same token, Vince, nobody bothered really to get to know me, to realize I'm cut from that old cloth of your word should mean something and the handshake should mean something. I am that old school kind of guy, even though I was an older wrestler that hit there, but I've been that way pretty much my entire life. I think there was a real missed opportunity. Even I had dinner with Bill Goldberg, him and a bunch of other businessmen. This was probably, I'd say, 8 or 10 years even after that I had left. And we're all over in California, and we're sitting around the table. And it's the first time that Bill and I had ever met each other. And so through all this conversation, we're finding some different common ground, stuff like that. And then eventually he just reaches across the table and just bumps me on the shoulder and goes, "Thanks." I go, "For what?" He says, "Dude," he goes, "I was you." He said, "I just watched you in the Ultimate Fighting Championships, how this crazy eye look that you had and raising of your hands and how you just destroyed people." He goes, "I was just being you." And actually, it turns out one of my other amateur wrestling buddies actually taught him the spear, the AK, the double leg takedown right there. And it was, I thought it was just kind of funny how much common ground that we actually that we had knowing different people. I just said to him, I go, "You did a hell of a better job of playing me than what I did me." So it was good.
But Dan, you know why? Listen, let me tell you something, Dan. Let's be honest here, okay? Dan, you know why people didn't get to know you? Because we were afraid of you, bro. That's why I didn't get to know you. I was scared to that. Listen, Dan, you're on here now. There's a lot of smiles, bro. You didn't smile back then. I was very afraid of Dan Severn. Bro, it's difficult to get to know somebody who just intimidates the hell out of you.
Well, no, but that is the truth there, Vince. I mean, it's if you don't know me, I'm not that I mean to be standoffish, but I'm definitely an observer of people.
Yeah, right.
When each time that I worked for the WWF, they said that they wanted the talent to show up somewhere between noon and 1 o'clock. Well, I'm there. I'm showing on up, and there's a lot of time to kill before a show is going to take place that time. So a lot of times I just went into the cafeteria area, would find myself kind of a quiet little corner to sit there because I would have my planner, I'd have my cell phone, and I'm working on all these various different projects I have going on in my life. And even one day Jim Cornette walks in there, and comes over and talks to me, and he talks to me about a couple of things right there. But he comes over there and he puts his hand on my shoulder and just asks me, "What you doing?" I go, "Jim," I go, "I'm just basically just here minding my own business." I said, "But I'm also watching theater unfold before me."
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so and he goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "Well, look over there." I said, "There's one of our top talent, and one of our top talent is speaking to creative." Now I go, "Can I hear the conversation?" Or you, Jim? No, but from over here, I go, I could probably put you some subtitles into that to where the talent is kissing the proverbial ass of okay, but the talent's kissing the ass of creative because the talent wants to be used in a stronger type fashion, because that's the one thing that disturbs me about professional wrestling. Professional wrestling is very politically motivated right there, and there's a lot of great young talent that's out on the independent scene that will never be discovered because they don't know how to move into those channels. And okay, now to carry the conversation on with Jim, I go, Jim, I have no future in politics. I'm a pretty brutally blunt type person. I go, I would rather, as I watch that scenario, I go, short of this guy reaching short of the talent reaching in his pocket, coating up his lips with some chapstick and kissing this man's ass, I go, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I would rather put my size 12 boot in someone's ass as opposed to kissing. Now the funny part though is, just a few weeks later, comes out to Vince McMahon, Kiss My Ass Club.
Yeah.
And I always wonder in my back of my mind, did that have anything to do with my conversation with Jim Cornette?
Yeah. Now, Dan, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I was reading. I don't remember. I don't doubt it for a second. Okay. I'm reading about the differences with creative, and you didn't like him, and you wanted to go. And I was reading that the thing was they wanted you to be a acolyte of the Undertaker, and you were asked to get 666 tattooed in your head. Is that a true story? And who did that come from? And I can't believe we were talking about a real tattoo.
Well, no, not a real tattoo. Okay. No, I mean it would have been whatever.
Who did that come from? Did that come from me?
No, you weren't at that meeting. It was a couple of other people with creative. You know, a couple of road agents. There was at least one person in it from creative, but they're actually. I already knew that the cycle of a professional wrestler. You are going to be the good guy, the baby face, and then they're going to spin you over to the dark side, the heel, and then back and forth again. That's the cycle. And I had already put together preconceived ideas of what I could live with being the heel character.
Right.
But, you know, when I'm being pitched this crazy idea of putting 666 across my forehead, mark of the beast, and being an Undertaker disciple, as they're starting going, I just put my hands up like a T, time out, and I'm like, guys, time out. Not going to happen. I live in small town USA. I don't want any repercussions against my family, nor against my businesses, nor against me. I go, this might be a show to you guys, but you would be surprised how many people take stock into this kind of stuff right there. True, and that's where... Yeah, I mean, literally, what happened at that point is, again, I can't tell you who exactly it was that made the comment. They said, well, you know, Dan, we could start using you poorly. And I go, well, what does that mean? Yeah. You know, my cackles, I started getting a little bit fired up right now. I go, what exactly does that mean? He goes, well, we could start, we'll start having you lose matches. And I'm like, where does it say anywhere? On my contract, I have to lose to anybody. What happens when I walk into your world of fantasy and I turn fantasy into reality? How many of your so-called stars do you think I'm going to make look rather silly?
Yeah.
You know, again, I don't think they thought I was going to come back with that, but I came back strong like that, and they're going, whoa.
Yeah, so, of course,
now, but right around the same time, you had the Royal Rumble is coming on up. And I'm thinking to myself, I can see the writing on the wall here right now. What's about to happen? And I'm thinking, I wonder if I should be reaching out to WCW to find out. You know, guys, when I go into the Royal Rumble there, you know what number you're going into the ring, and you basically know when you're being tossed on out. When it's time for me to exit the ring, what if I turn fantasy into reality? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I started just catering anybody and everybody because it's live. It's a live audience. The audience is going to think it's all for real. And I mean, of course, management's going to be going crazy. How are we going to get Severn out of this cage? They'll eventually get me out of that ring, but they haven't got me out of that arena.
Yeah.
But
Dan, you want to hear something funny, bro? And you're the only one who'll agree with me here. Okay, Dan?
Okay.
I'll never forget this, bro. After WWE, I went to WCW. Okay? And what happened was Bret Hart was our champion. And Bret got hurt. So we had to get the belt off of Bret. We had to make a quick audible. We had like a day or two to make it, right? Tank Abbott was with us at the time. So my idea was, listen, let's have like a Royal Rumble type thing. And, it goes on and on and on and on. Finally, one of the last guys that comes out is a fresh shoot fighter by the name of Tank Abbott. And all of a sudden, the shoot fighter gets in the ring and beats the crap out of the tired freaking wrestlers because he's a shoot fighter. People looked at me like I was freaking nuts and like I was crazy. And I was like, guys, I don't think you understand these shoot fighters would freaking kill you. And that's totally believable that a Tank Abbott would hit the ring while 5 guys who have been in there for a certain amount of length are dead tired on their feet and he would eat them for lunch. Was I that far off pitching that, Dan?
No, not at all. I mean, it's well, first off, Tank Abbott was a very intimidating individual to begin with, a very powerful individual. On top of that, I always say that the comments I always make about Tank Abbott is that he is everybody's nightmare at the bar. So, But no, it's you're right on the money. It's professional wrestling. It's a very well-oiled machine. I'd be just repeating myself. Just incredible athletes doing some most incredible athletic maneuvers without the aid of that safety net. Like I said, I'll just say that there was just a missed opportunity, I think, with my time in WWF.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
NWA, I cherish more of the opportunity I had with the NWA just because I was used the way that I should have been used, and it was great there because I traveled when the NWA. I first came on board the NWA. There's only 3 promoters even left in existence in the world, and by the time that I relinquished the strap over 4 years later, there was like 35 different promoters in the United States alone, on top of a number of them abroad. So I really feel proud of what I helped them do in that industry.
Yeah. So. Now, Dan, you look like, seriously, you could go out there and fight tomorrow. You still got a couple left in you, I'm sure. Correct?
I had retired in January 2013, but I retired with a clause. I simply said that if one of these 3 guys, and right in order was Mark Coleman, Ken Shamrock, Hoyce Gracie, I said if one of these 3 guys were to step up to the plate, that I would seriously contemplate coming back out of retirement for one of those 3s. The reality is, though, Vince, I did not want to go up against any of the young bucks because the hardest thing for a professional athlete to come to grips is your time has come and your time has gone. And I can even tell in my final 4 or 5 years of competition, my mind is seeing openings, and it's kind of like going, go, 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 go. Yeah. But by the time the wiring got from my mind to my body's saying, okay, that's not a good combination between mind and body right now. So I thought, need to exit here stage right. So I wouldn't mind doing a match with a couple of those, being people of my peers. But that's it. I don't have really any interest in going against any of the young bucks because I'd be an accident waiting to happen. And as one gets older, you start to realize what is my mortality? What is this? How many more years do I have? How many more good years do I have? Yeah. So those are things where, as I always tell people, no one's getting out of the game of life alive. It's how long did you stay in the game and how much fun did you have along the way.
That's a beautiful way to think of life. And Dan Severn, the realest guy in the room. It's out on electronic book right now. We're waiting for the hardcover book. Now, Dan, do you have a website that people can go to if they're interested in buying the book? I mean, the fact that you kept a diary through everything you did is fascinating to me, because even when I wrote my books, I forgot half the stuff. So the fact that you are documenting stuff is unbelievable to me. Do you have a website that they can go to?
Yeah, the best thing to simply go to is dansevern.com. That's where all the social media stuff is up there. People will get replies back from me via Facebook, and it's attached to the Twitter account. I mean, I'll throw myself underneath the bus there in the aspect that, I'm not the most social media expert whatsoever. I try to surround myself with good young people that do know how to run this kind of stuff. But yeah, Facebook is there, Twitter is there, but at the website dansevern.com is literally everything, and even that's being reworked because I'm going along with the title, The Realest Guy in the Room. I'm taking my website and just having it revamped because I want people to realize what I have really accomplished in this 40-some-odd year career. It'll be what it is, whatever it's going to sound like. I am walking history. There will never be another person like me, period. Mm-hmm. For the sheer fact of what I have accomplished in the sport of amateur wrestling, folk style, freestyle, Greco-Roman, what I did in judo, sambo, tough man contests, no holds barred fighting, to mixed martial arts, what I did at a young age, what I've done in the twilight age, and the sheer fact that I'm still looking, I'm not done. I may be done with mixed martial arts, but I'm not done, period. I'm looking at my next profession of submission grappling and other things right there, because I plan on making at least 5 decades.
That's tremendous. Well, you definitely are the realest guy in the room, Dan Severn. Dan, I thank you for your time today, and you are, I mean, literally, I mean, you are a legend. I mean, everything you've accomplished, everything you've done, just paving the way for so many people, even now speaking to the youth and passing it along. I want to thank you so much, Dan, for joining us. I'm going to sign off, but I want you to hang on because I just want to give you a personal thank you. But, Dan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Vince, thank you for having me.
It's right about time again to swerve again, confuse the general fans again. Add another swerve and then put it on a pole again. Put it on a pole again. Put it on the pole again. And our square to quad, it's gonna get emotional as I wait to overbook the damn cards.